Hello and welcome to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae in for Julie Grant. Thank you for being with us this morning and following along as we turn our attention now to a bizarre story out of American Fork, Utah. A man, his sister, and their mother are all charged with murder after the sister's husband was shot inside of the mother's home. Now, according to prosecutors, Restelli and her mother, Tracy Grist, conspired against the victim, luring him into the home where Catherine's brother, Ellis, was waiting to shoot him dead. Now, at the time he was shot, 42-year-old Matthew Restelli and his wife, Catherine, were going through severe marital issues. Kevin Stanley Ellis was the first to be charged back in July, and he has since claimed self-defense. We are now catching up on the preliminary hearing against Ellis. Let's go inside of that Utah courtroom as the prosecutor is laying out the facts of the case, the evidence they have, and the accusations against all three defendants.
On July 12, 2024, Kevin Ellis shot dead Matthew Restelli. The state alleges that Kevin Ellis, Tracy Grist, and Catherine Restelli conspired to murder Matt, who was Catherine's husband. In broad strokes, the state's allegation is that Catherine and Tracy worked together to lure Matt into driving to Utah and to entering Tracy's home where Kevin was waiting armed with a handgun. Almost immediately after Matthew arrived, Kevin shot and killed him. Matthew was unarmed. A knife was then planted in Matthew's hand to try and cover up the conspiracy and claim the shooting was in self-defense. We understand this is Mr. Ellis's preliminary hearing, but to explain the conspiracy and his role in it, the state will necessarily have to explain part of each individual's role in that conspiracy. Matthew and Catherine had two minor children, a female child who at the time of the death was age 6, and a male child who at the time of the death was age 3. Catherine's mother is Tracy Grist. Tracy Grist had 7 children: Terralyn Fisher, Catherine, Kevin Ellis, Tim Ellis, Rachel Jorgensen, Jacob Trujillo, Aurora France. Your Honor, at this point, I will now give a brief, roughly 5 to 6 minute overview of the state's evidence that will be presented today, as we present our theory that Matthew was ambushed and murdered by some of his in-laws. During the spring and summer months of 2024, Matthew and Kate had a strained relationship. They lived in California at that time. Kate viewed this as a loveless marriage, one from which her options to leave on terms she wanted were severely limited. The fractured relationship led Kate to having affairs and ultimately separating from Matthew on June 20th, 2024. She took their 2 young children to live at her mother's house in American Fork. Sometimes this was referred to as a breather or a break. The evidence will show that after Kate came to Utah, Kate and her family learned how hard it would be for her to separate from Matthew in a divorce and get everything she wanted. At this time, California would still have jurisdiction over the children in any custody battle or dispute. As Kate put it to a friend, honestly, I'm expletive. I just feel hopeless. The evidence will show that although Kate had wanted out with a divorce, a backup plan, if you will, of murder developed. A plan that began with Kate and Tracy, but eventually included Kevin as well. The state believes the evidence of the execution of that backup plan can be broken down into one of several phases. Phase 1 was to get Matt to Utah. Phase 2 was to get Matthew inside of Tracy's home. Phase 3 was to kill Matthew. And Phase 4 was to cover it up.
A plan to kill using an air tag to track the victim. That's the state's theory in this case. Now, the defense didn't offer an opening, so we're going to pick it up with the prosecution breaking down each phase of what they believe the co-conspirators' plan was to kill Matthew Restelli.
Phase 1, getting Matt to Utah. See, for this conspiracy to work, Matthew would have to come to Utah. The evidence will show that Matthew wanted Kate and the kids to come home, but it will also show that Matt did not actually want to come to Utah to get them. He tried various other means to get them to come home. He tried to rent a car for Kate. He then tried to just give Kate money so she could rent a car. But Kate and Tracy worked together to create lies and falsehoods as to why that wouldn't work. The court will receive messages documenting those excuses. Kate continually and consistently worked to convince Matt to come to Utah, and not only that, to drive to Utah. And she convinced him to drive a very specific car, their truck. You will hear a phone call between Matt and Kate where he talked about borrowing a car, but Kate was insistent he had to bring the truck. The question is why? Because an Apple AirTag had been placed inside that truck, buried in a bin of trash. An AirTag that Matt did not know about. Kate made sure he brought that truck because the AirTag would allow the Grist family, multiple members of the family, including Kevin, to track him on his drive. But even though Kate had convinced Matt to drive to Utah in the truck, the family could track him, there would yet be another problem. How would they get Matt to come to the house? See, the phone calls between Matt and Kate the court will receive today will show that Matt had one purpose. He was there to pick up his little family and go back to California. He even stated he didn't even want to go in the house. He didn't even want to turn off the truck. He just wanted to wait outside for them to come out with their bags. He would load them up and they would start to drive. See, one reason Matt didn't want to go inside the house is because he and Tracy, to put it fairly or nicely, just didn't get along. In fact, on a June 6, 2024 text message by Tracy to her daughter, she said, quote, "Matt made it so I want to kill him. He straight up lied. I'm gonna kill him." Despite that fractured relationship between Matt and Tracy, over multiple phone calls and messages with Matt, Kate persisted in giving him a false sense of security that it would be okay to enter the home. She told him the doors were unlocked. She told him her mother, Tracy, would be asleep. In fact, Tracy told Kate to tell Matt something to the effect of, "I'll be as sweet as sugar to him." Meanwhile, the family was monitoring that AirTag. Again, Kevin was part of the group that could track Matt through that AirTag. And we know that he could monitor it at least as early as June 26, which was over 2 weeks before the killing. In one text message exchange with Kevin told Kate that he could come back to Utah from a trip to Idaho if Matt came to Utah from California. Specifically, he said, quote, "If I have to rush back, I can make that happen." He then sent Catherine a screenshot of Matt's Apple AirTag location through the tag in the truck. Throughout the day of the homicide, there were numerous phone calls between the family along with messages, many of which discussed Matt, and preparations were made throughout the day. Tracy had a private lunch with Kevin at a local sushi bar, and only a few days before that, Tracy had deleted her entire chat history with Kevin. The youngest daughter who lived in the home was sent away for the night. Together, the family monitored Matt while Kate worked to get Matt to come into the home. All the while, an audio from a phone call placed just a few hours before his arrival, Matt's arrival, shows that he didn't want to turn off the car, but in fact, he asked Kate specifically to put out a piece of cardboard so he didn't leak oil on the sidewalk or the road for the very few minutes he'd be parked there. During these phone calls, Kate consistently told Matt how much she loved him and how she was excited to go home with him. And this is despite the fact that she told a friend that night that she had allegedly told Matt she wasn't coming home with him. But then, right after that phone call, she texted Matt the gate code to the gated community the Grist and Ellis home was inside of. And then at 10:01 p.m., just minutes before Matt's arrival, Rachel, one of the sisters, texted Tracy and Kevin to look at the AirTag. And the metadata on Rachel's phone shows that Kevin's phone read that message.
The investigators in this case follow the digital trail, looking at those text messages, posts online, and they say it all points to a plot. Let's bring in our analyst who is standing by, trial attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice. Randolph, your reaction to this case? It's a new one that we're looking deeper into, and it sounds like investigators have a lot.
Yeah, this one sounds like an Adelson case all over again. And notice the prosecutor says he has 4 phases of evidence, and he's only on phase 1. And I'm convinced already under phase 1 that these guys planned to kill this poor man that was coming to this house that what he thought was to pick up his kids and his estranged wife. This AirTag data, I think, is going to be the death knell for this family, because ultimately, every time they check that app, every time they log into that app, that data is captured. The state's going to use that against them when they say, "Oh, why are you looking at this AirTag that's tracking this man driving to your house?" Because they were all planning together to kill him.
And you mentioned the Adelson family. We might hear in this preliminary hearing that there were internet searches a month before the death of Matthew Restelli, where the grandmother was searching Donna Adelson, the murder of Dan Markel, looking up details about this case. So you wonder, what were they thinking and how does it connect to this case in Utah? One quick other question, Randolph. So we've got a self-defense claim here. The knife was found in the victim's hand. His family said he was left-handed, but this knife was found in his right hand. Your thoughts on if a jury will say that that helps support his self-defense case?
Well, I think the prosecution is going to put a lot more evidence forward about where the knife was found in his hand and what direction the knife was found in relationship to his body, which direction the knife was found. You know, a lot of times knives have on the handle, you'll have a straight side and you'll have a rib side for your fingers. Where was it found that direction? Were there any other injuries that relate to the hand that would have prevented the victim from holding the knife? So I think there's going to be a lot of evidence that the state's going to have to prove that this was a setup, that they put that knife there to make it look like this was a self-defense argument.
Whether or not the person was gripping that knife or if it was loosely held, because if you're dying or dead, you're not going to be gripping it as tightly, I think is going to be the state's theory, but we will see what comes out of this hearing. Randolph, please stand by. Coming up, we have one of the defendant's sisters taking the stand to shed light on the family dynamics and their relationship with the victim, that father, Matthew Restelli. Stay tuned.
How are we doing, guys? We good? Okay.
You're on very shaky ground.
That is unreal.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
I did not do it to hurt anybody.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
This was a real-life soap opera.
And I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
This morning, we are following a big hearing in the family plot murder trial. It's a Utah case against Kevin Stanley Ellis. He's a man charged with murdering his sister's estranged husband, so his own brother-in-law, Matt Restelli. Now, according to prosecutors, Restelli's wife, Catherine, and her mother, Tracy, were also involved in the planning of this murder and, as a result, have been charged. Let's go back into the courtroom now. We're watching an unaired hearing where the prosecutor is detailing the alleged ambush of Matthew Restelli by his estranged wife and her family.
We move to phase 3, what the state alleges is an ambush. Matt entered the gated community, and a neighbor's security camera observed Matt's truck pulling up to the Grist or Ellis home at 10:06 p.m. Matt took approximately 30 seconds to park. He even left his hazard lights on. At 10:07 p.m., the neighbors heard gunshots from the home. At 10:09 p.m., the neighbors called 911. It wasn't until 6 minutes later, or around 8.5 to 9 minutes after the shooting, that Tracy called 911. Your Honor, you will hear the surprise in Tracy's voice as she found out the neighbors had already called 911, because that was not part of their plan. Just 2 minutes into her phone call, you will hear the police arrive, having been dispatched from the prior report by the neighbors. They later called Matt an armed intruder, but the evidence will show that Matt was neither armed nor an intruder. After all, he was given the gate code, specifically told the front door to be open, and that he should just come right on in. Which leads us to the fourth phase, Your Honor, what we call the cover-up or the obstruction. When police came in, they did find a knife in Matthew's hand. Now, outside of that 8 or 9 minute delay in calling 911, there are at least 3 pieces of evidence the state will present today to suggest that that knife was planted in Matthew's hand. First, the knife was being held backwards. Second, the knife was held in the wrong hand. See, the knife was found in Matthew's right hand, but Matthew Restelli was left-handed. And third, there was a bullet hole in the wrist of Matthew Restelli's forearm, where the wrist and forearm come together. A bullet had perforated his ulna and severely damaged the muscles that provide the flexion and tension in a grip. Your Honor, you will watch the body cam of the 3 co-defendants and be able to observe numerous inconsistent statements. You will hear connections between Tracy. You hear about connections between Tracy and a company that supplies the exact type of knife that was found in Matthew's hand. You will hear that on June 16th, 2024, Tracy Google searched Utah, shoot, break in. And you will hear that on July 11th, 2024, the day before the killing, Tracy searched, when was Donna Adelson arrested? Donna Adelson is a woman charged with hiring a hitman to kill her son-in-law. Your Honor, the evidence today will show that the person Tracy conspired with to kill her son-in-law, Matt, was not a hitman, but her own son, Kevin. Thank you.
Wow, and there's the connection that police found to the Adelson saga, the case. This defendant, one of the defendants, not the one sitting there, but the grandmother of this family, looking up the grandmother who's accused in that crime in Florida. We have more ahead in the Ellis case there in Utah.